obviously all of these are new weapons, and a lot of these predictions end up being wrong because we don't have them in our hands. Some of them are completely new. We don't know any of their mechanics yet. And sometimes people, push them and find uses for them that we hadn't considered. So, you can go back and find a whole bunch of other predictions that I've made and see how those turned out. Take this all with a grain of salt, but this is, my best educated guess about what people are going to be looking at and what people are going to be finding valuable. You'll notice that this is a really top-heavy list, and that has not always been the case. There have been a lot of seasons where they've released with some pretty lukewarm kits, things that give very niche utility, if anything. This is not one of those. There are multiple new main weapons that I'm looking at like, this could be something that we just start seeing at top-level play immediately. And it's something that I think a lot of people are going to be experimenting with. To start with, I think this is probably the most surefire one, which is why I'm putting it at the top. We have the new range blaster. I think that this one in particular is going to be good because we already have a kit of this that is already good, and it is not good because of its kit. The bomb is fine on it, but this one also has a bomb. I would argue potentially a slightly better bomb. And on top of all of that, it's just got a much more valuable special for the way that the game is played right now. Wavebreaker is a bottom tier special, and while it has some synergy with the range blaster, it just wasn't cutting it. I think Kraken is going to be substantially better, and I think this kit is probably just going to replace the other kit in the majority of situations. There aren't too many reasons I could see to run the old one over this, and the old one is getting run. So it just seems like a pretty sure hit that this one is actually going to see a lot of use. Then we've also got the heavy edit. The current heavy edit has been seeing a lot of use, in part because of its ability to spam cooler. This one is going to get the ability to use all of that paint to get a lot of crab tanks. Now, Crab Tank is really strong right now. Like, nobody's complaining about having a Crab Tank on their team. I think one of the challenges that this weapon introduces that we'll have to figure out a solution for is how you get Tacticooler onto a team when this is already on the team. Because a lot of the time, the ideal choice is the pencil, but this would require you to probably use like an NZAP. Now, NZAP did get a slight fighting buff, so if people are going to run NZAP comps, this immediately becomes something that you might consider for having a crab tank, having that kind of anchor weapon, but also having a little bit more forward pressure, having something that can kind of walk forward, use its fast run speed while it's firing to get involved in some fights, while also being able to play that anchor role. If people start going down, you need to hold space and disadvantage with the crab tank. I think there's a lot of potential for this to be that pseudo backline weapon that you have on your team comp, and to be able to run forward at the enemy team with this, provided you've got that cooler support from the Zap. So it would change what your comp was to try and run this, but I don't think it would change it in such a way that it couldn't be successful. I think we'll definitely see a lot of interest in this at the very least. The next three, I think, could be significantly stronger than the heavy edit, but they're also a lot less tested than the main weapon of the heavy edit is, and the special combination with it. So this is more uncertain. That means that it could, again, be much better, but I'm putting it down here because I'm not as sure about where it's going to fall. So the Dowser Dualies, the new ones, they have Tri-Strike Burst Bomb, and this is just a substantially better kit than the previous one. I don't see anyone arguing otherwise, and I think strikes are only going to be more powerful, and this is a weapon that I think synergizes very well with them because of the range that it's already going to naturally play at, which is just the perfect place to throw strikes from. You're not going to get anywhere near this thing without it finding out about it, so it's going to know when it's safe to throw those strikes. It's already going to be where it's safe to throw those strikes. It's going to be able to throw them very fast. So I think that this definitely has a lot of potential, and I'm putting it up there for that reason. There are still some questions that need to be answered because this is a very new main weapon, and the kit has previously made it so that nobody wants to play the first kit that we got of this thing in competitive. So it's going to need to get pushed before we'll really know exactly where it lies. But I think there could definitely be niche cases where you would want to use it over something like a squeezer or a stamper, given certain conditions of the map mode, team comp, what you need in order to win that game. When I first recorded this video, we were thinking that Big Bubbler was going to have an amount of paint that it put down below it equivalent to its entire full max range radius. And that turned out not to be the case at all. It's basically an amount of paint the size of a burst bomb. And that makes a massive, massive difference in how strong we were thinking this was going to be. Because we were looking at the Mint Decavitator and thinking, okay, this can just put down a Big Bubbler and cap one of the two Manta zones just by itself. Like, that's what we were seeing ideas of people doing. But now that we've got it in our hands, we're like, oh, okay, this is a much more reasonable amount of paint. This is not going to cheese zones. And it's not a bad amount of paint either, but it was a little bit much thinking that it was going to cap the zone and also shield the zone so you can't paint the zone and make it so that even on the bigger zones, you take half of it with the bubble, you put it as far forward as you can, and then you just paint the backside and you've got it for free. That would have been really obnoxious, and it would have opened up a big niche for like Reef Slider and Strikes, you know, some of the specials that attack into the bubble pretty well, but that probably wouldn't have been a lot of fun to play against. So I'm glad that it's not working that way. Looking at the decavitators, I think the Mint Decavitator I could definitely drop a tier knowing what I know about the bubble, but for the sake of continuity in the video, I'm just going to leave it at the bottom of this tier, since I've already shot the rest of it, and this is just the one part that's changing in post. The decavitators as main weapons are going to be quite strong. I don't know if it's going to be quite as strong as the Stamper. It loses range, and it loses the ability to hit up over ledges. What it gains for that is the dash and painting width. For combat, it feels just a tiny bit weaker, weighing all of those things, especially if the painting width is compensated for by poor ink efficiency. Like, if it uses a lot of its ink tank off a single slash, that would be a big issue for the weapon. It's going to be really dangerous at the mid-range. It's going to be dangerous to rush at this thing with a short-range weapon, but that's not really the metagame right now. Right now the meta is bullying with long range, is fighting from a distance until, you know, you're able to rush in with a tactical or something. So, I don't know. It's definitely going to be close to how strong a Splatana Stamper is. Like, it's going to be very good. And it does a ton of damage. Like, a single charge slash off of this is going to combo with so many different things. Like, even the weakest indirect of a burst bomb, the 25 damage hitbox, is just going to splat off of this thing because it does 80. So there's a lot to talk about there. As far as the kits go, I think Splash Wall is a really strong sub for the Charcoal. What you can potentially do here is throw the Splash Wall out and at some point use the dash to get back behind the Splash Wall, or like cross the Splash Wall up while attacking as you go. The dash will also potentially dash you further past the Splash Wall than you can be splatted by like a bomb thrown off the side. So it could be a safe like launch pad for you to use that from. And it's also, you know, Splash Wall is just strong again for closing distance against various things. Right now, you know, we've been seeing a lot of use on it on the Squeezer and the 52 Gal. I think it should still be fairly strong on this as well. There were, you know, in the patch a bunch of buffs to various weapons for damaging the Splash Wall, but like I mentioned in yesterday's video, none of those weapons are actually really viable right now. Like, we're not really seeing very many of those at all. And even the ones that are like approaching viability, they're not going to be using the main weapon to attack the shield. They're hopefully going to be throwing bombs at it or something. So that's not really much of a concern. I think Splash Wall will continue to be just as strong as it has been before. The Inkjet here, I wanna love the Inkjet. I think that like the Inkjet is cool. The problem right now is that with Zuka and with Pencil being so strong, it's kind of hard to exist in the air with the Inkjet for a long time. You really have to be kind of deleting any long range threats you see. Midline meta is also making it really hard because, something with longer range, it has the range to aim up and shoot one of these things down. So once you're up in the air and you don't have any cover, whoever you're aiming at scrambles, but then everybody else on the team is likely to be able to do something about it. And that makes it kind of dangerous to try and use. It's got to be with some pretty strong set plays. So it's hard to see that being the strongest weapon in the game in a way that like you can sometimes say the Splatana Stamper has been. The kits might not be quite positioned perfectly for it right now, but I think it's still going to be viable. I just wonder if there isn't going to be something that outclasses it. As for our other decavitator, having a bomb is awesome. Nobody's ever going to complain too much about having a bomb. It is a big chunk out of the ink tank, and if this is an ink inefficient weapon, then it might have problems using it. So that's a potential concern, but it does kind of buff its defensive capability. It was already going to be strong on defense with its main weapon because of how much it paints around the hitbox. Like, having that wide of a trail means it is so easy to paint someone's feet and paint them thoroughly. So I could totally see that being really good even without the bomb at defending at some kind of range. And the Big Bubbler, I thought that it might be broken in zones. Looking at it now with the paint buff, it's still better. And like we talked about before, this dash with the one shot, it's going to love having shields for that, because now if you try to approach the shield, you get anywhere near it and it can just dash through and get you. And if you try to push into the bubble, it's going to have the range with the dash to melee range one-shot you from anywhere inside it. On top of having, a newfound ink advantage underneath by the paint being put down on the bottom, and it just painting a lot in there in general. I think it's going to be a strong Big Bubbler user, but whether this paint buff is really enough to make the Big Bubbler worth it, I have my doubts. And so this is the one I would probably drop down a little bit, but I think depending on how strong the main weapons are, they both could be in contention with the niche that Splatana Stamper occupies. I just think Splatana Stamper is probably a little bit stronger than these are still. These are probably like map mode basis, team comp basis. I could see it being the case where you just want a roller if you're trying to play the more aggressive play style, or if you just want a Splatana Stamper if you want to play a little bit more at range before you go in. But we'll see, because Splatanas have been very strong. These could be very strong as well. We'll have to see. Next down is this Bamboo. I think this is the best Bamboo kit that we've gotten so far. I think it is significantly better than the first one. Fizzy Bomb is insane with Bamboo. It gives a lot of damage potential to just give the Bamboo a one-shot. Bamboo does 85 damage. All you need is any one of the 3 explosions. So you need to get completely out of the radius of that really, really large space-controlling bomb to not just get one shot right away. Oh, we've still got those turned on, huh? Let's get rid of that. Goodbye. And Super Chumps, same deal, where Super Chumps already do significantly more damage, and now they'll automatically make it that if you get hit by any one of them, you get one shot by the Bamboo. It makes it so that the Bamboo can really kind of force you backwards, because you're either in the Chump Forest or you're in range of the bamboo. So you probably just kind of have to back up. It kind of gets used like a weaker version of a Booyah Bomber missiles, but one that, if it hits, can still combo with the bamboo, and it really supports that zoning playstyle. So, like I've said before, I think this might be the strongest chump user in the game now that it's out. Also consider the synergy of Fizzy Bomb with chumps, that you throw the Fizzy Bomb into the chump forest, it makes it more difficult to get out of the chump forest. It chips you so that fewer of the chumps need to hit you so that you go down. Like, there are definitely a bunch of damage combos that I feel like that's all very synergistic. And is it going to be strong enough to see competitive use? I don't know. But it is going to be, I think, stronger than the current kit. And people have at least dabbled in the current kit. So I could definitely see people finding at least some niche uses for this. Next up, the Wellstring. This is the biggest question mark by far. I have no idea exactly where this is going to land. Maybe the main weapon makes it so that we just have to play this and nothing else on the backline. For all I know, that's the way it is. I don't think that's the way it's going to be. Well, looks like maybe there are going to be some other additions in post as well, because it's also come out now how much damage the Wellstring is actually doing. This is confirmed by Ash Binary, a data miner, who has actually been playing around with the weapon, and you can go and find it on Twitter. Looking at that footage, and also from what they have said, it appears that the weapon is going to do between 24 and 35 damage for a pass-through shot, depending on how much it's charged. So the minimum damage on a tap shot is 24, and then the maximum damage once you've fully charged it is 35. And so, it goes on a gradient from uncharged to full charge of 24 to 35, and it lands somewhere in between there depending on when you release it. And then the arrows, as they land, do 30. So the damage numbers could potentially be lower than the Tri-Stringer, but you've got to remember that because there are 5 arrows, there's a lot more of a likelihood that any one of those arrows individually hit. So I do think that this is going to generally be a higher damage output. There's just more damage for you to run into. There's more potential there, I think, to chip someone really hard. So I think that this is kind of a heavy version of the Tri-Stringer in terms of like damage output. Slightly slower, but slightly more damage. And it might be more reliable to hit the damage because you've got a wider arc that it goes on, or you've got a longer line that it goes on, in terms of how the arrows line up and where your shots fly. Especially if you're doing jump shots and hitting the verticals, like hitting a bunch of those shouldn't be too difficult. And all you need is 3 of them if you get a single, full charge. So that's gonna chunk people. And I think that could have more chip potential than the Tri-Stringer currently does. Thing is, it's sacrificing range, and the current Tri-Stringer already struggles a bit fighting Pencil, as far as I'm aware. So I think it probably doesn't make too much of a difference. The range difference, it's already going to lose the matchup anyway. So it might as well focus more on bullying the other weapons in the game, and that might be the way that it goes. But again, this is very far outside of my wheelhouse. This is me speculating on a weapon that we don't have yet, that has never existed before in the newest weapon class in the game. Take all of this with a grain of salt. The biggest thing that makes me put it in probably not meta is just the kit, because I think that's something we can be more certain about. The strongest one is probably the Autobomb Ultra Stamp one, and like Ultra Stamp is not really what you're trying to use this for too much. It feels like it is going to be a much stronger weapon at short range than something like an Explo would be. It's going to be a little bit better at keeping itself safe, and so it can probably play a little bit more aggressively and poke a little bit harder. But also, Pencil is in the game, and it's probably going to outrange this, and so backline matchups going to be a little bit more difficult for that reason. The kit isn't super inspiring. Like, Ultra Stamp is not going to be like this game-changing thing. Maybe it paints a lot, and maybe that's something that's valuable to the team, but the pencil already paints a lot, so if all you're trying to do is get an anchor that can also paint a lot, you go for that instead. I just don't really see this seeing a lot of top-level play, but I also don't see it being bad. I also don't see it being something that like you can't win with, especially if you're committed to playing on an off-meta comp, playing what people are comfortable with. Like, I think a lot of tri-stringer players are going to take a look at this, and if they are liking it, it might at least replace their primary weapon. So, worth considering for sure. I think we'll see a lot less out of the other kits with Point Sensor Wavebreaker. Wavebreaker just needs massive buffs before I think we even give this the time of day. It's nice in that it's a kit that synergizes and that you're going to be able to see people really well. And just like the X-Blow, where you use the point sensor so you can see people up over the top of cover and then hit them from there, like it's going to be useful for hitting those combos, but I don't think it's worth picking that up and giving up the more useful special of the other one. Neither Ultra Stamp nor Wavebreaker are like super high level specials right now, things that you're trying to prioritize on a team comp, but I think the Auto Bomb still gives you some location ability, which can still let you hit some shots, and the Ultra Stamp is probably going to get you a bit more value right now than the Wavebreaker will, so that's why I put it down a little bit. Sea Hydra, like I've talked about, Hydra in general has been seeing very little use at top level recently. It's just very slow, and it's been that way for the whole game. There aren't that many people who are pushing it in general, so I don't see this particular kit getting a lot of use either. There are already a lot of options that people are preferring for splatter color screen. Foil Squeezer is one, 52 Deco is another, and that's if you can actually use the screen, and you're going to have to default to the other kit anyway if you aren't able to use it. Now, the other kit's, not bad for it either. So, ink mines aren't bad. They let you cover flanks. They let you see people flanking you. But I think the main weapon itself is probably what's holding this back from being used competitively, and that's not the part of it that's getting touched by it getting a new kit. Then my video on the Rebrella, I put in the thumbnail that I think the best part of this kit is triple splashdown, and that's probably kind of all you need to think about to be like, oh yeah, this probably won't see a lot of competitive use. It could probably be fun in a casual setting where you're trying to set up for splashdowns, and it's going to be pretty good at doing that. I could definitely see this being really strong at lower levels of ranked, where splashdowns are avoided a lot less, and people are a lot worse at shooting them, especially because you've got the Toxic Mist to trap people inside them, and also where people are not as good at dealing with Brellas because they're not recognizing, oh, I can just shred this thing, and then it can't do a lot of damage to me. But I don't think that this is going to get very far even in X rank. I think it's going to be really difficult to push. Of course, Keen will probably still go and like crack 3k X power with it anyway, but I think for the most part, this one is not going to get touched very much, and I think Nintendo probably need to reconsider the kits that they want to put on something like a Rebrella, because I just don't think this is it. Those are my thoughts there. We'll probably still see Cooler be dominant in the meta. Zap and Snipe Rider are still very strong weapons, and you can build a lot of various comps around one of those two pieces. It is still kind of frustrating that it seems so mandatory to just run a Tacticooler, and for every other weapon on your team to just be really good at splatting the enemy team. I think that while it allows for a variety of different weapons, it doesn't allow for a variety of different play styles. It doesn't allow for a variety of different team comps and strategies. So while we're seeing a lot of different choices that people can play, and that's always a good thing for the game, I really wish they had addressed Snipe Rider at some point before now. I worry that maybe that weapon will carry on even into the endgame meta in the state that it's currently in, and that a lot of people will just kind of be in Cooler jail, and that'll be part of their role for as long as Splatoon 3 continues to be played. That would not be a great situation, I think, for the longevity of it, for its ability to build momentum into the next title. But we'll just have to wait and see, because there's a lot that's going to change very soon.